She was, by the way, one of my first really interesting and cool interactions in real life with a Metamour. Yeah, I mean, she was dating somebody at one point that I was interested in too. And I remember being at work one day and she sent me a text message of the two of them together. And I immediately weevily thought was oh my God, why is this person flaunting this at me, blah, blah. And I was like, whew, and I got up and I put my phone down and I walked outside. And I was like, don't message back right now. And I stood outside and I was like, wait a minute. She's trying to include me. I don't like something about it. But wait, this is the thing that you're actually is your core fear with Metamours is that you're going to not get included. And she's actually actively including you by connecting with you about this and reaching out to you. And I went back in and I kind of fake it till you make it moment with that belief. And I was like, thank you. And then whatever, I don't remember what the rest of the interaction was, but I felt better and I felt her loving me and wanting to be in connection with me and wanting me to be in connection with that shared lover. And that was revolutionary.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from all over the world to hear their personal journeys of self-discovery through the lenses of love, sex, and relationships.
Our mission is to show people that they're not alone and to inspire them to embrace their true selves so that together we can open minds and live authentically without shame.
We believe everyone's story is powerful and beautiful, yet it's important to remember that everyone does life a little bit differently and that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we aren't doctors. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 329. We're Finn and Emma.
First take?
Not quite. Anyway.
Second take.
I wish. Today, we are thrilled to bring you a conversation with Anna. Anna is amazing, if we do say so ourselves.
We do.
As you'll see in this episode, they are an incredible storyteller, an artist, a counselor, a writer, and an activist. And we're really excited for this conversation.
Yeah, it's amazing. As we've already said so ourselves, this is a really beautiful conversation about an incredibly powerful journey. And I think one of the things that I love about it is just the amount of compassion for others and self-compassion that Anna has, and sort of the knowing that we're all doing our best and that all of the experiences and challenges we face in life and overcome are really what make us who we are. And it's really just a very human conversation.
Yeah, agreed.
We also talk a lot about Metamours.
We do, because happy Metamour Day. February 28th is Metamour Day.
Yeah, so just to be clear, this entire conversation is not only about Metamours, although the way Metamours have shown up in Anna's lives and the role that those relationships have played is a major thread. But that's not all we talk about.
No, we talk about so much more throughout this episode. However, the first 10 to 15 minutes, we do cover a lot about Metamours. For anyone who's not familiar with the term, it is often referred to as your partner's partner or those that love the ones that we love. And so we have just an incredible conversation with Anna about Metamours at the beginning, and just it's a theme throughout too.
Yeah, so you'll learn that Anna is I would say the champion behind Metamour Day, not the only one, and they'll talk about that. But you can head over to metamourday.com to learn more about some of Anna's work and what Metamour Day is. The other thing we would love for you to check out is, as Emma said earlier, Anna is an artist, and they donated 5 different designs for postcards that are designed to be sent to your Metamours to show Metamour love, Metamour appreciation. And you can buy those cards, 5 cards for $18 through Bloom, our friends over at Bloom, the Bloom community app. And first of all of the links to this stuff is in the show notes, so you don't have to write it down. You can head over to our podcast show notes at normalizingnonmonogamy.com or in your podcast player. But You head over to Bloom's website, the link in the show notes. You can buy 5 cards for $18. If you would like to save a little bit of money, you can use the discount code NNM, as in normalizing non-monogamy, to save 20%. However, if you don't use that code, you pay the extra 20%, which all of the proceeds for these cards gets donated to Open, which is the Organization for Polyamory and Ethical Non-Monogamy. And they are a nonprofit organization dedicated to fostering the polyamory and non-monogamy movement by advancing cultural acceptance, building political power, and supporting non-monogamous communities and leaders.
Yes.
I read that from their website. Could
That's
you
okay.
tell?
Yeah, that's
so
okay.
The point is, you can buy Metamour cards to celebrate the love for your Metamour relationships. All of the proceeds for those cards go to support nonprofit work to help better the non-monogamous community. And we would love for you to do that. The links are in the show notes. And these cards are amazing. Anna is amazing. Their artwork is amazing. And
Go check it all out.
And you can also find links to work with Anna as a professional and their counseling work as well in our podcast player show notes. I think that's all the things we needed to say at the beginning of this one. It's a little bit longer because today is a hella awesome day and Anna is a hella awesome person.
Agreed. We do have a couple other small things to mention. One is throughout this episode, Anna does mention William, who is their husband. William previously came on the podcast back in episode 234. So if you want to hear his perspective and his story, go listen to that episode. Additionally, Finn mentioned the Bloom community app. If you want to learn more about Bloom, we also interviewed the CEO and all-around badass Noah back on episode 321. So go listen to that as well.
And the last thing we need to tell you before we jump into this interview for all of the premium subscribers is that around the 26-minute mark of the interview, there is a trigger warning around the topic of suicide. Anna talks about a very dear friend of a Metamour who passed away a few years ago, and they mention this, they bring it up. It's not talked about in depth, but it is part of their story. It is part of their journey. And we wanted to make sure you knew upfront that if you wanted to skip past that, it's again around the 26, 27-minute mark for a few minutes. So please keep that in mind and listen at your own comfort.
For anyone who's a premium subscriber, we're going to jump into the interview with Anna now. And for anyone else, we do have a few announcements, but we're going to keep them very quick. So first up, if you're not familiar with the premium subscription, it's a way to skip these announcements up front, jump right into the interview, and you still get important dates in the outro. To sign up, go to our website, Normalizing Non-Monogamy, scroll down on the homepage and sign up there. Well, you're also there on our homepage up at the top. You can see a banner for our next virtual meet and greet. Sign up. Please come join us. This is a great way to meet like-minded people. These are open to anyone. You just must be open-minded and respectful. They're low pressure, fun events. Our next one is going to be on Thursday, March 7th in the evening.
Yeah, if you don't have any Metamours today, that's a great place to meet some people.
Yeah.
Next year on February 20th, you can be doling out the Metamour cards. Be like, met you on the Normalizing Non-Monogamy virtual meet and greet. So excited to send you this card.
Way to push it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I push it real good. The other way that you can incorporate Metamours is our favorite way to get tested for STIs, stdcheck.com. I say you round up the whole polycule, pile into the van, you go grab brunch, and then you head over and get tested for STIs.
Not a bad idea.
It's a great idea. And then you can exchange cards.
Yeah.
Pokemon cards, perhaps.
You mean Metamour Day card?
That's what I meant. Yeah. And then I got distracted. So anyway, the whole point about this is stdcheck.com is Emma and I's favorite way to get tested for STIs, service we've been using and loving for many, many years. If you use the links in the resources tab of our website or in your podcast player show notes below, you get to save $10, which brings the cost of a 10-panel test down to only $129. It also helps support the show financially, which we are super grateful for. And it helps support the greater non-monogamy community because you are better informed about your sexual health, which then you can inform all of your partners who can then tell all of your Metamours who then get a card from you.
Yep.
So it's a great day for Metamours and non-monogamy all around. if you get tested for STIs.
Yes, agreed. And a final reminder, reach out to us, send us a voicemail, send us an email. We would love to hear from you. You can find that on the contact page of our website.
Yeah, we would love to have you come on. You do not have to be the powerhouse behind a international holiday, nor do you have to be anybody else other than yourself to reach out and come on. We would love to have you come on and share your story.
And with that, let's go and talk with Anna.
Welcome to the show, Anna. We are super excited to talk to you today. It is a Friday morning for us, for you, the listeners. It's a Wednesday, but happy Friday. It's sunny out. Welcome.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
We would love for you to start with just introducing yourself.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. My name is Anna. I live in Oakland in the Bay Area. I'm a transplant by way of Louisiana, where I met my husband. And before that, moved around kind of a lot as a kid. My mother was born and raised and grew up in Norway. And my dad's side of the family is Jewish immigrants, not very far back. So I don't know really where I'm from. I love being in Oakland. I love living in Oakland. I've definitely flourished there. And I don't know that I would say that I figured that out quickly. California was a hard place to figure out. And I feel I have a lot of compassion for trying to do that, even to past Anna. But I'm really loving being there. And I have 2 master's degrees, one in creative writing, and I still think I'm using it, and one in clinical psychology that I got at San Francisco State. And I think of myself as a storyteller in just a lot of different realms. My undergraduate degree was history. So I've whatever I'm doing, I'm trying to help tell stories and help people tell their stories, whether it's purely narrative form or also in embodied artistic ways. And I spread myself around joyfully with work as a therapist, as a licensed therapist in California, and also as an art maker and an editor and writer on social justice projects. And I just like getting myself busy with a lot of different creative, narrative-based power building for people individually and collectively.
I love it.
Yeah, amazing. And I'm excited now because we get to have you, a storyteller, tell your story to us. And that's one of our favorite things. And before we do that, we want to highlight a little bit of your work because we usually, as we said before, we usually do this at the end, but there's some really important things being celebrated today, February 28th. It's Metamour Day. And we have you on specifically to talk a little bit about how you're using your sort of art and creativity to spread the love for Metamours. And maybe we'd love to start there about a little bit about what Metamour Day is. Maybe for anybody who doesn't know what a Metamour is, that would be a great place. And then how people can find your work and support it. And we would love to start there.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I have for reasons in my journey with non-monogamy found the word, the sort of space of what Metamour is particularly enlivening. I'm also what I would call a compersion nerd. I'm a friend of your friend Marie Thuen's.
Yes.
But I am, and so those things kind of go in tandem, trying to learn about how do I have a practice in compersion, which means basically, to me, joy for another's joy. Mm-hmm. And to have that joy for the Metamour. And the Metamour being if paramour, which I did some research on this just recently, basic Googling research, the word paramour meant just lover and wasn't illicit. It literally means para, the par meaning by, and amour. So by love is your lover. And that at some point it got this kind of darker meaning, but not until the 14th or 15th century out of the Latin. I believe I might be getting the century wrong. Don't quote me on that. But it was late. And that now there's this moment in our kind of nerdy way in people's journeys around non-monogamy that we do, where we like to think about how to describe what we're doing in our current context, that we're saying, oh, there's that person who is my lover, my paramour, for me, for example, my husband, and he now has a girlfriend. And that person is something bigger than or beyond the lover relationship, just by love. And I've tried to describe it recently as extra love. It's like extra, more, bigger. And so we're using the word meta. And so we say Metamour, which means like somehow beyond that, the lover just by love. It's like somehow beyond. When I think about metaphysics or kind of like having a meta analysis of a situation, using meta in that way. Although I do like to make the pun that I'm sending meta, which is the Pali Sanskrit for loving kindness, but often in Latin characters in English, it's spelled Metta as opposed to Meta.
Got it.
But
Yeah.
I send Metamour to my Metamour, I guess, or Metamour to my Metamour, something. I'm playing with that.
Still working that out.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's what Metamour is to me. And I'm somebody who I've been thinking about this in a really joyful way coming here today. And I'm like, oh, this is inspiring me to get to kind of dig in deeper about my own relationship to this, like my history, part of my story around why Metamours have been so kind of have like resounded in my growth and my choice to live non-monogamously. Because I got early on really like, oh, how am I relating to my husband's partners? And it wasn't always easy. And then sometimes it was very difficult. And I wanted to like, take care of myself and take care of the kind of the larger collective, my relationship with my husband and with these other people by trying to be careful with myself around that, grow, be clear, like mess up, forgive myself, do repair with people, all of that good bread and butter relating stuff. And it became clear to me that I really wanted to figure that out. So I started getting kind of a little obsessed with the concept of Metamour. I've been thinking, again, leading up to today about like, where did this come from in my childhood? That these are some of the ways that I have been, to me, in some ways, I would say uniquely to me, triggered by or activated or tracking the Metamour relationship or struggling with compersion. They're struggling with joy for their autonomy. And having some really cool thoughts about that in my own therapy this past week, even. Yeah. And so, but in that kind of curiosity about that for years, I've been like, I want to like have Metamour be a thing we do something about. And so at some point I came to, my husband's name is William. I came to William and I was like, oh, there should be a day. We should celebrate Metamour Day. This is probably like 2015, 2016. And I'm 100% certain I'm not the only person who has had that thought. But I started getting his ear about it. He was like, oh, that's actually a good idea. And I was like, oh, William thinks I had a good idea. Yay. Which says something about that's a whole other maybe podcast. But it felt good to me that he liked that idea. And so I kind of wanted to run with it. And I went out in 2017, I think, and bought the URL metamourday.com. I was like, this should be a thing. And I also bought worldmetamourday.com. At that time, I was really like coming out of my kind of egocentrism as a person growing up in the United States. Yeah. And didn't do anything with it. Got busy, sat on the URL. And then in 2019, discovered that the National Coalition for Sexual Freedom, somebody there named Kira Harpson, I hope I'm saying her there, I'm not sure their pronouns, correctly. Yeah, they picked a date and ran it as an initiative through NCSF. And so I'm just really happy that people are thinking it's a thing and that it is kind of an idea of its time. And so I started just furiously making art around it as part of that place. I was saying that one of the things I do is storytelling in a lot of different directions. I got really excited about like, can we push this story out in the world? Can we build some narrative power that would help folks connect with their own story and not feel alone in these stories around Metamour specifically?
Yeah. It's amazing. I love the entire sort of inception of it is really just sort of fluid and beautiful. And that is brought us to today where you're making cards people can buy and support Organization for Polyamory and Ethical Non-Monogamy, Open, which is another Bay Area initiative, which is an incredible organization doing advocacy work. And maybe you tell people a little bit about the cards, how they can find them, which will, spoiler alert, be links in the podcast show notes, so you don't have to write any of this down. And then we'll jump into your story, because I want to hear about all of the coming of age of how this happened, how we got here with Anna.
Yeah. Well, the quickest way I would say to find it is to just go to metamourday.com, because I have that URL. So I've been using it, and I'm trying to push people over to Bloom now and push people to NCSF, but you can find all you need to there. So, Perfect. And I'm also fundraising for something called the Modern Family Institute, which is another initiative in the Bay Area that's trying to expand our definitions and protections around what a family is through research and like kind of think tank space, maybe more so than as much about like the way Open is in action, as an organizing situation. But if you go to metamourday.com, you can go to Bloom, and you can I donated the art to Bloom so that they could sell cards to make money for Open.
Amazing.
Yeah. And then the other thing that's on there for Modern Family Institute is t-shirts. Now I'm selling t-shirts to try to help them. And the t-shirt designs are everything from like there's like pretty decent Metamour, all the way to like escalate friendship. That Metamour to me can have this really expansive definition as well. Of like, what are just the kind of things we're navigating in these like unique connections that we're actually making explicit, where in monogamy, sometimes those connections exist, but we're not explicit about it. Mm-hmm. We just don't call it in.
Yeah.
Totally. So metamourday.com, and Bloom is doing an amazing job of helping, spread the word. So they have their own landing page for Metamour Day. And then also we're a friend and colleague of mine who's a therapist, Serena Wong, are throwing an event in Oakland on Metamour Day at a bar restaurant called District, where we're inviting people to come out and mingle with their metas. And so we're going to have some light activities. So I'm understanding that this is going to be something people are hopefully listening to on the day that this is happening. So today, go out today to District. You don't have to have a ticket. You don't have to sign up. You can just show up at District, and you'll be welcome to have people around to just chat with a little bit about what it's like to have the concept of Metamours.
Awesome.
We had no idea. I guess we have a date for Metamour Day. So we'll be there. I love it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's amazing.
Perfect. Well, we're learning something new every day.
And if anyone's listening to this episode after February 28th, don't worry, there'll be another February 28th. So, and you can celebrate at any time, but there will be more, of course.
Yeah.
Thank you for all of that.
Yeah, celebrate anytime and in any way. If you're listening to this and you aren't coming to District, hashtag Metamour Day 2024 on your social. Yeah. Join the conversation there.
Yeah. There's I love that. There's so many opportunities to join the conversation and to celebrate in your own way. And it doesn't even have to necessarily be on the 28th. Celebrate whatever you feel called to celebrate when you do. So it's just, I think it's an important recognition. Mm-hmm. And I love that this is here. And I love that it's also such a great reminder to celebrate it throughout the year.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for all of that.
And all of the work you do.
And all of the work you do.
Yeah.
We would absolutely love for you to dive in and let us know kind of where, I'm trying to think of where to start. There's so many questions I have. Where did non-monogamy, alternative relationships enter your life?
Yeah, I had a relationship with someone that started when I was very young, that I look back on in sort of a very tender way. I was a freshman in high school, and I was with that person until I was a junior in college. And we didn't know how to do relationships. And I have, I don't know if you know the Bitmoji where the character, it's like just a avatar where the character's like taking their whole heart and they like rip it out of their chest and they hand it out. And I look at that avatar and I'm like, oh yeah, that is how I existed in that relationship with that person because I didn't know. And I think that it had something to do for sure with my childhood and some of the chaos of the household that I grew up in. And that person actually ended the relationship. And it was extremely hard for me to feel that in that moment, but I'm very grateful to him for it. And after that, I was like kind of on this really like, I swung the other direction. I was like, oh my God, I am never doing that again. I will never need anyone. And I'm like saying this to my mom on the phone one day. She's like, wow. And I still kind of fight sometimes. Like I have this kind of cute argument. I don't know if that's correct, but conversation with a local educator, Marcia Baginski, about how some needs are actually really personal to the person. And Marcia's like, yeah, but could you get that need met another way? And I'm like, okay, fine. I'll think about that more. She's really helped me expand how I get my needs met. But yeah, I moved to Louisiana at some point, found some folks. I was living in Chicago for college at that point. I moved to Louisiana and found some folks that I knew there who were trying to practice non-monogamy and was like, what is that? And then I was getting into a relationship with William, my husband, and trying to figure out what I was going to do with that place in me that didn't want to feel so kind of like, I don't know, risky, that I was giving my whole heart to somebody again, but that I knew I needed to give my heart again to the world for my own sake. And like one version of this, which is kind of a hilarious story between me and William, is that as I was also concurrently as a person who, felt very affected around sexual repression, was trying to find my sexual freedom, and learn about my sexuality, had a date with William and went to a friend and tried to describe it as like joyfully a one night. I succeeded at having a one night stand. Of course, now we're like approaching 15 years later of marriage and near 20 years of relationship. Oops. But I got to experience flying in that way, in that moment, feeling like that I could, go after that and feel proud of that even. That I could feel proud of having a sexual experience that I was in charge of and didn't have to, immediately fall into someone else's container around. Yeah. So that was huge for me to get to do that.
Totally. Well, it sounds like a lot of the narrative was based on your Bitmoji that like, if you do this, you rip out your heart and you give it to them. And that is the only, like those two are inextricably linked. And
like that's the only option.
And you must give everything versus like, maybe I could give a little bit here and a little bit here. I imagine even the concept of non-monogamy at that point was really revolutionary from the give your whole heart to one other person.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. And but then it was still stuff was like trained into me.
Sure.
So then I'm like, okay, I'm on this path of maybe trying to titrate. That's a word I know now from my therapy training. At the time, I think I was trying to titrate, get a little bit of freedom and a little bit of security, a little bit of freedom, a little bit of security. Mm-hmm. But at that time, then when I'm saying to William, like, yeah, please go have other experiences. This is the world I want. And so he does. And then I was like, oh my God, my body does not know how to deal with this. I am like totally not trained for this in some way to sort of know how to handle it. So I had I used to describe it as like I took a wrecking ball to the training of monogamy in me. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, but I got a lot done fast inside me. And I was resilient, and I did work through it, and I really stood up for myself around that, had all my feelings. And, William has all of his truths and feelings, and it really matters that he has his path around these things. So I don't tend to think to try to talk too much about how that was for him. I find myself very curious. I know he was, just having his own experience around that. But I know how much he loves me. And we went through some rocky times around that. And we continue to, try to work through how we're connecting in life. And I'm just really grateful that he keeps showing up for that with me. And I would be grateful if he didn't. I remember sitting at one point and the two of us having this conversation of like, the most important thing is when we're ready to not be doing this together anymore, that we say that to each other. And then that's going to be okay somehow.
That's I would say, one of the most powerful and impossible things to tell a partner, especially a partner of, almost 2 decades. Like that's a really intense and beautiful thing to be able to say and then to really believe.
Yeah. And I think we believed it from the beginning. I think we knew it. Mm-hmm. And I think, we talk sometimes about the capacity versus the value. I think we valued it. We knew the value of it, and we've been working on our capacity to be with it and move through the feelings around it.
With the practice of non-monogamy, that it hasn't been an easy road, but that you see the value in the work to at least practice to keep working towards it. Not that there's ever an end goal, that you've achieved a non-monogamous enlightenment, but just that it's an ever sort of changing growth practice of how do we relate to different people in different ways and come back to ourselves at the same time.
Yeah. Easy work
for a Friday morning.
Yeah. I mean, I'm really blessed, graced with some of my current career path, because that's my job now. So I get to practice all the time. How do I track myself? How do I show up for myself? How do I track my clients? How do I show up for my clients? How do I show up for understanding the wider system that we're all in? Whether it's like their person that they're struggling with and talking to me about, or just living in this socio-political context. Mm-hmm. So I get to practice, I think, what you're talking about constantly. And then I have to remember that means I need to be gentle with people who don't spend the same amount of time practicing that. Yeah,
that's true. It's not everybody's daily work. And that's it. True. Very true. I'm curious, Anna, for you, it sounds like the initial stages for you were Williams out fostering other connections, and that was the initial place you landed of having to work through those emotions. At what point, or at any point, did you start to think about, could you relate to multiple people in a similar way or in your own way?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll never be able to tell you the whole story. So this is and people can, so there's something true about the fact that he was sort of in some way out there first. And when that moment happened where he hooked up with someone, I was on a trip and I tried to hook up with someone, and I decided I didn't want to because I just wasn't that into that person.
Wow, that's big.
And so sort of like, also there's a truth that is something about how the like cards landed that I don't know how, that might have gone very differently. Mm-hmm. And yet, I think even in that moment, I fairly immediately was like, wait a minute, I actually need to like focus here. Like I need to do some work to focus here because I want this. I want more experiences. I want more connection. I was doing things. I was so, because of that early relationship that I had, I was really unpracticed. I had very little like dating I had very little sexual practice. I'd had 2 other sexual partners before William, in my like mid 20s, so late 20s. And so I really had to go like, whoa. And I was doing kind of clunky things like reaching out to a girlfriend who told me about sex she had one time to be like, well, would you do that with me? And she was like, no. And I'm like, oh, is this not how this is done? So I feel like I definitely had more, I had more growth in that way to do, but I don't think I was actually that far behind William in caring about it. I had some theory early on that maybe there was some way that, emotionally I was like more wanting or spacious to connect with more people in more emotional ways, and that he was more spacious around connecting with people in more sexual ways. I don't know if that's true, but I definitely remember getting comfortable with the idea that I was going to be having big feelings about multiple people, probably before, and that he was too, I think. I think I felt more comfortable with the big feelings, and I've always felt more scared or like left behind around the sex. And then I want to doubt myself as soon as I say that. I don't know if that's totally true, but I remember like going to Burning Man in like 2011 or 2012. We met in 2005, and I think it was like 2006 or 7 that we started opening up. So 2011, 2012, I was like massively in love with this other person. And I was at Burning Man and we were standing there going like, that's okay. I can't feel this. Like I remember just being out on Playa for some reason and having this moment where I was like, this is comfortable. This doesn't mean anything about William or me. This is okay. And I think I knew that about what was going on with him with other people. That broke down for me in 2017. And it's interesting that like remembering we have whole lives and whole histories to deal with. That really broke down for me in 2017 when I went through a really traumatic loss. One of my best friends died from suicide. I don't know if you want to put a trigger warning on this episode now for mentioning that.
We can, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and that really like broke me in some ways to my core. And I lost track of my ability to show up for relating in a lot of ways. I went to a grief group around it a bunch. I went to my first silent meditation. I was in my own therapy. I tried mood stabilizers finally for the first time in my life. I was exercising like crazy. I was trying to do all things, but I couldn't go be in social spaces. And one of the things that really happened for me is I think I had a broken thought somewhere in my mind that I had to reweave back into a different kind of meaning. I was with her like a day or two before she died. And I had this very like uncontrollable, I can say it now with more control in my voice, but uncontrollable experience feeling of a cognition that if I talked to people, they might die.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you had that experience.
And so I was really struggling to be in social spaces at all for a while. And that was not wonderful for my feeling about either William or my long-term partner at the time, who was, in his other relationships. So this is another person, Joe, who I met in 2010 and started dating in 2011. And we've been dating pretty consistently this entire time we're still together. But yeah, I just like really, cause like, I don't know if I can be in connection with anyone, let alone bringing it back to Metamours, some of the Metamours. And so I really, that moment, like I was not at my high capacity emotionally. I was very like, oh my God, I can't handle the feelings at all. And I think personally that rattled old stuff that sometimes made the emotional stuff in my non-monogamy journey difficult, from my childhood and stuff from my mom and my dad and friends when I was a little kid, and and aggravated that stuff. And then it ended up motivating me to work on it even harder. So I feel more stable and more calm. I have way more tools to come inside and say, oh, Anna, it's okay. You're freaking out right now. What's going on? What's going on? Okay, does this remind you of something? Do you think someone's about to get hurt? Is this dad yelling? What is this? You know? And I now can do that in a way that, like, so the feeling part really just feels really much more stable. I don't have nights that I lay up in bed, kind of like spinning and activated. That sometimes, attachment activation can cause us to like have insomnia or have perseverating thought or feel really like activated in the body. I don't get nearly as much of that. And I've learned to be much more gentle with how I hold myself. And so I'm like, oh, this is really wonderful. I'm really learning like a little bit more about how to fully heal. And I look back on that friendship and I do the like really bittersweet thing of thanking her. Of like making out of her, the loss of her life, so much more life in me. And I celebrate her. Her name is MJ. She was a photographer. She was an incredible human being. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. And to bring it around to what you just landed at, like it has been a journey, right? From that experience. And yeah, it's just amazing. That not that anybody should go through what you've been through or what she went through or anything like that, but that there can be beautiful things even in horrific things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was, by the way, one of my first really like interesting and cool interactions in real life with a Metamour.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, she was dating somebody at one point that I was interested in too. And I remember being at work one day and she sent me a text message of the two of them together. And I immediately like weevily thought was like, oh my God, why is this person flaunting this at me? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I like got up and I put my phone down and I like walked outside and I was like, don't message back right now. And I like stood outside and I was like, wait a minute. She's trying to include me. I don't like something about it. But wait, this is the thing that you're actually is your core fear with Metamours is that you're going to not get included. And she's actually actively including you by connecting with you about this and reaching out to you. And I went back in and I kind of fake it till you make it moment with that belief. And I was like, thank you. And then whatever, I don't remember what the rest of the interaction was, but I felt better and I felt her loving me and wanting to be in connection with me and wanting me to be in connection with that shared lover. And that was revolutionary. She was also a meditator and told me early on in our connection that she spent time one time sitting in a meditation trying to send me metta, the loving kindness, the MTTA metta. And yeah, I got to experience through her such a revolutionary way of being in connection with a Metamour. And it probably set me on a path. I have lost track how many times I've had Metamour interactions. I date too much. The people I date too much. So there's so much Metamour relating that I'm dealing with. But she was one of the first that left an impression about what I could do, what other people could do, what we could do together differently.
And I love the amazing reframe of this isn't them trying to snipe me. This is them trying to pull me in. But in the moment, it's so easy to flip to the activation and be like, this has to be like, because we're trained so much that everything has to be of a you versus me, or a me versus you, or us versus the world, versus like, hey, to know that she sat and like in her time sat and meditated and thought about you, and like that's the type of person you're dealing with, not somebody who's like, I'm going to show her how much I'm like friend, with her partner. Like, it's not about that, but it's so easy to go there.
Well, it's like flipping it in that moment from like feeling like an attack to like, oh no, I'm going to assume good intent on her part. Even that, fake it till I make it right now. Like, I'm trying to assume good intent. I'm having other emotions come up, but I'm just going to like, I really do want to assume good intent, and that you were able to work through it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I can give myself a little bit of credit for that too.
Yes, for sure.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. That's not easy. And it takes slowing down in that moment.
Mm.
Like, you didn't respond right away. You went outside for a few minutes. You sat with it. Like, when something like that happens, I think that just taking a moment to slow down is the most helpful thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love too. And I think that one of the things that is easy for people, especially new to non-monogamy, is to see people who've been doing it for 20 years, or to say, oh, well, this person has a website, Metamour Day. They must be like the master of metamours and compersion. And what you've shared with us over the last few minutes is that this hasn't been, you didn't just wake up that way. You didn't graduate high school a wizard in compersion and mastering Metamour, but you've done work, you've gone through experiences. It's been hard. You talked about even just until recently where you would stay up late, ruminating on stuff or feeling activated. And so giving people, like, I want people to catch that this isn't for everybody. This isn't just easy. And yet you still persevere and you still show up and do this for reasons that, maybe are really hard to say, like, I do it because I get this, right? I think so much people are like, well, it's got to be, all the sex. It's like, you have no clue the sex to like work ratio that actually exists, or the work to sex ratio that actually exists in cultivating these types of relationships. And so I'm just grateful that you share that this wasn't just, yeah, I'm the Metamour master and that's why I bought the website.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have some of the resources that I've had. I've landed in really a lot of like lucky moments. I have done some cool things. I think I have to always remember that I do cool things and the world does cool things for me. And I've got to stay humble with both of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm curious, this is sort of an off the cuff question. If you were to get rid of being humble for a minute and share one of the really cool things you've done, I'd love to hear one of those.
Oh, interesting. That's a fun question. Yeah. Let's see. I think my ethic can be really inspiring for people. There was a moment early on in our lives in California when a lover of William's was pregnant, and it was not likely at all that this was William's kid, and she chose, for her good reasons, not to do the amniocentesis testing. She wanted to do whatever she felt like was the safest for the child, and that test has some risks to it, as I understand. So she wanted to keep the kid. And so there was this moment where I was like, well, I'm not signing up for non-monogamy and the risks that come with that, and then not signing up for the humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay, that's your right. I'm only gonna tell you. I had like a half a moment. It's okay to say how I feel about this, and then I'm 100% going to say, what are you choosing, and how are you doing it? And some of what happened around that was that I ended up becoming her birthing partner. And I showed up at that level. I was like, I want to make sure this is how we're doing community. And so I was like, I learned a lot of really interesting stuff. It's the only time I have been at a live birth. There were multiple of the potential fathers who showed up that day and were, in the process in that way. And I think that's really cool that I had that ethic that was going to like live the village if I was going to step into the village.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
The kid, by the way, is not Williams. That didn't end up panning out in that way, which is what we thought would happen. And I feel cool about having built community in that way, in that moment, leaned toward it that way. And I don't think I did a better job. There's not someone should do that if that wasn't right for them. It was right for me, and it was cool that I did it.
Yeah.
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 I mean, so many people would, I think, even to your point earlier about, well, if now is the time that we should not be partnered, we will honor that. Like, so many people can say that, but to actually walk it, and you're here saying, I'm now looking at a situation where my husband might be the father of somebody else's child, and I'm not just saying that, I'm actually here for it. Like, that's powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that I'm pretty good post recovery from the traumatic grief that I was in, and then healing even some of the older stuff from my childhood. I'm pretty good at this moment, at this stage, of really being able to stand in kind of sort of radical relating and revolutionary relating that doesn't deny how big the story of my relationship with William is. It will always be that no matter what he and I do. If we lived on opposite sides of the planet and somehow we're not speaking to each other for some reason, I know how big our story is. I don't need to fight around that anymore. I just know that.
Yeah.
That can't be erased. We can't undo that now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful. I think too, a moment of levity for me is that really puts into perspective I can't believe you're taking your partner to our favorite restaurant. Like, that seems like a much smaller weight in comparison to what you've decided not to make light.
And can bring that can bring up emotion.
Oh, I'm well aware. That's what I mean. Like, that is one that we hear often is like, I can't, like, that was our place. That was our thing. And you did it with your partner. And so to me, this is like, well, that's a whole new level, but I guess.
Well, and still does.
Yes. Yes,
still I hear certain things from either Joe or William, and I can have this moment of like, I don't even mean that I don't sometimes probably some shadow of myself act in some crappy, crabby, shitty ways. But my baseline through all of the work that I've done has leveled something about that out again. Now, life events might change that. I'm not trying to say I get now to be in this way forever either.
Sure.
I might become crappy for either of them again at some point, or for myself. And I will have to face that at that time.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. I'm curious, and I feel like we've kind of piece this together, but if you could explicitly share a little bit about how on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis non-monogamy looks like for you today.
Yeah, well, right now I'm actually traveling interstate to support Joe with some family stuff. So I'm out of town on that kind of trip that he and I have done a little bit more of recently. And so there's sort of this kind of feeling of checking in that I think both William and I just gravitate toward. Most of the time it's daily, but not always. How you're doing? How was your day? We're tracking each other, even if we're not in the room together. And I'll go back to the house that we live in together on Saturday. And, the next trip that I have planned is with him back to Louisiana for some friends who are also non-monogamous that are getting married. And to see family there. We have a newish nephew of a couple of years who I really want to spend more time with. And that is exciting for me to get to have that trip planned with William. That feels fun. And I like more and more the idea of thinking about other relating that I do as comets. I don't think I've until just very recently was like stewing on what that could mean in my own therapy for me. Like, did I want that? Would that be a helpful thing for me? Because one of the things that I'm also kind of trying to figure out for myself is, oh, two partners feels like my capacity at this point in my life. And that might change, but I have been pretty consistently in that truth for the past like 6 years, 5-6 years. Like, whoa, I can't do more than that in terms of like the level of what I call partnership and how I like to relate, like consistently traveling with someone, showing up for, dates and relating and whatever. And so then I spread around a little bit more in a pretty demisexual way, liking to have heart connection, really the friendship part mattering almost more than anything. And then like building like romantic stuff on top of that with a lot of addressing openly with clarity, like this is what I have space for, this is what I have time for. Maybe sometimes too often describing it as anxiety. Like, I'm really anxious, I can't show up for more than this, but please don't go away. But can we flirt, but like in a way that's like every couple months? Yeah, I think that's like my solar system right now. I was sort of joking that if I'm an Earth and the sun is like my purpose, I have a couple moons and some comets, and I love living in the community I live in. We have some friends who've been calling our friend circles partycules, which is like, a spin on polycule, that we're like also kind of this additional thing beyond being in a polyamorous kind of like community, a tight-knit community, that we actually like to do it in a celebratory way. So we're a partycule, and we, on our group chat threads where there's like everything from what are y'all doing this weekend to like, oh no, I got sick, can someone bring me soup? but that bigger solar system that I'm in with all the other planets and their different orbits with each other, I'm really grateful for. Feels like one of the also most important things for how I handle myself. Like, I don't think I can totally get away from what was learned, taught into me about partnership, and that cadence feels really, just like enlivening and stabilizing concurrently for me. And so I want partnership, whatever I can mean by that. And I think it's these two people. And then there's more room for more. I am still in my own personal question mark around parenting. And I know that either way, whether I have a kid at some point or I don't have a kid at some point, I will get to grieve something. And that will necessarily change whatever that constellation is like. That they might become a son for me in a way. If I end up in that place. Yeah, and I don't know. And then any other number of life events might shift what it looks like. But that's a kind of a, I guess, a rundown, I think, of what it looks like right now.
Yeah. No, that's a beautiful summary.
Yeah, I love that. There's the sort of the way it's fun to hear you sort of describe this, because it's been something that I've been thinking a lot about, is the concept of forming connection based on capacity rather than based on like almost the intensity of the feeling, right? To be like, this might feel like a level 1000, but like my capacity is I can go to like a level 10. Like I could see you once every 6 months, because just not because I want you to go away or I don't care, but just that's not, my life can't do that today. And those are such weird things to hold simultaneously true.
Totally. And it's, it's extremely vulnerable. And we go back to Marsha Baczynski's teaching on desire smuggling, this idea that we find all kinds of ways to try to have our desire come through in unconscious ways, that's a clue that that we're actually like sort of scared to name what we actually really want. That when things can feel like power dynamics and tug of war, we might be really just butting up against the intensity of the vulnerability of speaking our desire, and like the all the different layers of desire. Like, I really want to be in like a love affair with you on a Tuesday, and now I feel like I'm asking you to be my unicorn. And that's really scary to say. And then, the grief work and the disappointment work and the expectation work of like, okay, and now I've said it, and whatever you say back has got to be okay. That's your boundary. It's your truth. Mine's mine, and yours is yours.
Mhm.
Yeah, I could sit and talk about this for like 5 hours because it's so interesting. Even what you just said, like I could say like on a Tuesday, like I want to have a love affair. And I think that's such a cool way to describe it, of like, maybe it's like really intense, really passionate, and it happened on a Tuesday and we don't see each other for 15 more Tuesdays. And even then it's a mystery, but like that doesn't devalue what just happened. It doesn't devalue the other person, and or it doesn't devalue you. That all of those can all exist all at once and it not be like disrespectful or shitty in any way. If you're just honest about it, like, this is it. And you won't see me probably for 6 months, but not because of anything other than life. And will that work for you? Yes or no? We should decide together. Do we do this?
Yeah. Yeah. Y'all are familiar with polysecure.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably heard this idea of like a safer sex conversation around STI, the safer sex conversation around what is it going to mean to each other. And I have this feeling that effectively what Jessica did in that book was to sort of offer this idea that you can have a safer relationship conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what kind of relationship might we have that will feel like safe for us? Now don't do it perfectly. We're always doing risk management for ourselves and collectively. But to be able to say, oh, this is a kind of conversation that we can address and bring up and have an open channel for, was a really beautiful, revolutionary kind of space that I got out of her book, actually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I love that reflection, and the way you just framed that is great. There's so much here.
Well, that reframe is really, I hadn't thought of it that way, right? Because we do, if we're going to go and have a sexual interaction with somebody, we talk about what are your yeses, what are your nos, what does, what would feel safe to you, what are your practices around this? And then to be able to translate that to a relationship and be like, okay, hey, if we go out on a date, what does that mean to you? What are you expecting tomorrow? What are you expecting out of that? Are you looking for a live-in nesting partner to co-parent your kids, or are you looking for somebody to go out and go running with once a month and be a little flirty with? Those are all valid ways to relate, but very different. And if one of you wants the live-in co-parent and one of you is looking to go for a run, it's going to be tough to mesh those together.
Mismatched.
Just as if, one person shows up to a sexual interaction, like I'm, into super rough, kinky stuff. And the other person's like, I'm in a really light, calm, caring place. I couldn't do that. Right. You're not going to have a good time, but like, we don't talk about that. We just, yes, thank you for saying that. I will not spend the next hour unloading about this.
Well, thank you for bringing it back into that space, because that is a place where people are kind of really like practicing and looking at it, so it's like just even the STI conversation is still like wildly new in a world where there's so much stigma.
Yeah.
Still, and so, yeah, I mean, I sometimes maybe get a little too attached to kind of playing with these ideas. I know there's so many other resources out there, the Radar, even Misha and Reed's class on attachment. Like, this isn't a brand new idea again either. And I'm like, there's a charm for me about calling it a safer relationship conversation, using the language that I want there to be safer power conversations. Mm-hmm. Like ways that we can start to at least a tiny bit bring up, like, what's the power dynamic here, and address that early. oh, like I'm this person who, has this role in community, and you're a person who like, exists in this way. How's that going to change how our sex goes or how our relating or relationship goes? And can we just go ahead and normalize like having a conversation about that early? But yeah, I'm like charmed by myself of like pulling this trope of the safer something conversation. Yeah.
I'm delighted that you threw it out there like that, because
it's awesome.
It really did reframe it for me in a way that I had maybe been thinking about it, but never been able to label it.
And yeah.
Because
I was just going to say, it just is testament to different language can resonate with different people in different ways. And so it could like radars, was one thing, and like that can resonate, but then you reframing something as like this safer sex or safer relationship conversation, like that lands in for somebody else differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally.
I'm like lost in the analogy. I'm gonna go one more time because it's fun. Like, cause I'm thinking about right, we're talking a sexual health conversation, right? We talk about past experiences or if there are STIs. And I think to map that into the relationship would be, maybe I'm coming out of something where I have some trauma around a thing and I need my partners to know that so they can say, oh, I maybe really struggle with people who have a really anxious attachment because of my own stuff. And so we can do this, but I now understand you better. You understand me better. We're going to have a better chance of navigating this without hurting each other. And so those histories are, to me, almost just as important, if not more.
I love that. Yeah. Like a safer well-being conversation, a safer mental health conversation.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Oh, we could go on and on.
I feel like we just born ourselves a workshop out of this conversation. Like, this is amazing.
Yeah, well, and y'all are so beautifully engaged in like safer narration conversation. Like I was not doing it. I was not doing it. Its value. Tried to explain to Joe the other day some of how you hold this podcast. And I still won't. But what I want you to know is what I got from listening to your intro and to talking about it was that you actually are mindful and heartful about what these narratives are going to do out in the world. And that matters. And we don't have to shy away from that. We have an agenda. And the agenda is like supportive. And the agenda is uplifting. That doesn't mean we pretend there's nothing hard. But it also doesn't mean we come in and just like thrash around without a sense of who we are and what we're trying to give to the world. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I think what's so, just to getting rid of our bit of humbleness for a moment, and that is that what we have seen with this is the hard is really what people relate to. I mean, sure, it's fun to be like, oh, I had an awesome experience at a sex club, or I had, it was easy for me after 10 years too, or whatever. But it's also the like, oh, I didn't know anybody else was struggling with this. To your point, thrashing around in the pool, like we aren't in there by ourselves doing it, but I think it's so easy to feel like I'm the only one out here struggling. How is everybody else doing this perfectly? And when you can get below that surface and be like, no, it's not perfect. It's really hard. And these people who are maybe saying, oh, I've got 6 partners and yeah, it's a great, that there's also hard under that they didn't just arrive there. And that's a daily practice of working on themselves, working on their connections.
Totally. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
I'm all for that. I'm a really big fan of Nora. I'm not going to know her last name. I can't say her last name. Something Irish. I want to say she runs a podcast called Terrible. Thanks for asking.
I love that.
She's really good at that, like drawing that line between like how the grief is part of the joy. Mm-hmm. We need to be able to be in contact with our grief in order to feel our joy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think being able to share it with others to know I'm grieving and hurting, and somebody can pop up and go, you'll never believe this. I went through that same thing 6 months ago. And they can look at them and go, oh, wow, you're still alive. Okay. I guess I can, my path may not be your path, but it's possible. it's possible that I will be okay and that I'm not going to be stuck in this dark place indefinitely forever and ever.
It's normalizing the humanness of being human.
Fully, yeah. I mean, I went through a period of time where I thought I was just like really fucked up about Metamour relationships, and I come back over and over again to it was after MJ died, and actually I went through another. I've been through another pretty bad loss about a year ago. Another one of my formative Metamours died in a tragic way. A woman named Jen Angel, who ran Angel Cakes, a bakery. She's an incredible person. Yeah, just a shout out to her too for showing up and being really like loving to me as a Metamour when it got off in a rocky way. But like I have definitely felt at times and in recent times, like I don't know what I'm doing and I'm like messing it up and I'm bad at it, having to breathe, having to come back to what's true, that question, and settle down and look around and work on making amends when I am maybe treating people in ways that are not ideal. And then forgiving myself. Forgiveness, like one of the hardest things we do is like understanding the difference between forgiving ourselves and that we won't do it again. It doesn't mean we are giving ourselves a green light to like repeat shitty behaviors. We actually have to own that we won't repeat it in order to get to that moment of real forgiveness for ourselves, in my opinion. But like, yeah, it's like I'm still re-establishing ego around, can I just like be clear that I have made amends for some of the places where I haven't been kind or open or spacious to my paramours or my metamours, and work from that place and let that be okay that I'm working from that place. And find times when you need to be proud of yourself, Anna, because you're not going to get anywhere if you're only upset with yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
No, it's such a good reflection of what you just said of like, you're not going to be proud of yourself if you're only ever upset with yourself, and holding both of those. Like I'm a human. I can make mistakes. I can be unkind. I can do things, and there's chances for repair. There's chances for things that can change. We're all growing and shifting, and to recognize that and to hold yourself in loving kindness through all of that. So that you are proud of yourself, proud of yourself and proud of ourselves for being human and be able to be human in our fullness. Yeah. Thank you for everything today, Anna. Is there we could talk for hours.
I wanted to share one quick thing because it made me think of every Friday I follow somebody on Instagram, a friend of ours who does hilarious stuff around play workshops. They're incredible. Not in the non-monogamy space, but he had one today that said, it was like a meme that's his Friday, like kind of funny, uplifting post. It said, today I'm going to be easy on myself unless I make one single mistake, and then I'm going to be really hard on myself. And I just like, it just felt so relatable here. Like, no, yep, I'm going to be kind to Finn today unless you fuck up once and then you're done.
Yeah, don't we all know that, like and then in where I've learned some around Buddhist teachings through Western teachers, this idea of the second arrow, like we're already in the pain and then we like give ourselves more grief about the fact that we're in pain. Like I feel shame, and it's like, oh, I feel ashamed that I feel shame, or etc. Yeah, and my like one of the biggest tools I have gotten to navigate all of that with you bringing Emma up, the loving kindness, is going back to metta and going back to the whole system that comes from, called the Brahma Viharas. There's 4 of them, and you might know another one called mudita, which is the joy, universal joy. So it gets compared to compersion. I think it's a version of compersion. But there's also upekkha, which is peacefulness, and karuna, which is compassion. And I have come to really understand how interlocking those 4, so benevolence, compassion, joy, and peace are. And if I'm not able to access when I go practice with another one. Like if I'm not feeling joy from that, for a Metamour or my partner, I'm like, oh, maybe I need compassion for myself. Or I'm feeling unstable. Maybe I need more peace in the system. And I just try to go practice. And usually when I like pull from that system somewhere, the others get buoyed. And I really love that system. I go to it over and over again to help myself. And I just think that's like a thing that I love to get to say whenever I'm somewhere. So I'm glad I got to say that right now, that the Brahma Viharas are clutch friends.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that in as well. Is there anything else you wanted to get out in the world before we let you go?
I think I just want to just again, be really pleased with the work that y'all are doing. I mean, narrative is so beautiful. I just really am glad to have you telling the hard, the good, the fun, the weird. Like, this is massive. We have massive work to do when we're talking about changing culture and systems. And you're like over in your corner shouting from your mountaintop, and it is making a difference.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Anna. Well, I'm okay leaving it on that note. Which is so hard. I don't like. Yeah, that is hard.
It is hard. It is hard.
I was tempted to ask you if you had a blooper too, but man, I don't know. Does that feel like would you want to share a blooper? It doesn't have to be a sex one, a relational, non-monogamy. I mean, you've been doing this almost 20 years. Has anything funny ever happened to you?
Oh, for sure. Like, what? Yeah. Can I pull it up right now? I know you do this. So I forgot to even consider what this could be.
The trick is you have as much time as you want because editing will take care of any.
Right. Let me think. Let me slow down. I do realize that I tend to be very, genuine, earnest. William likes to joke that I'm so earnest. And I am, and I like that about myself in a lot of ways. Something funny. It was, this is I don't know if this is it. So let me say it and see if there's anything more. But one of the things that just pops into my mind is, and when William and I got married, and some of our friends who were gay, and maybe rightly so, kind of struggled with the idea that we were going back in the closet because we had been saying we were poly and that we were going to kind of hide in the framework of marriage. And I was kind of annoyed at that at the time, but I get it a little bit more now. But I know that there were ways that we were still trying to shift out of that. And William told me the story that he went home to kind of talk to his family at one point, and he was talking to his dad. And we both were out to our parents pretty early on. I think partly because of the nature of the careers that I think even then knew we wanted. We wanted to be able to make some of our career around helping ourselves and others with non-monogamy. So I think we intuited that we wanted to be out about it so that it became kind of our job to be out about it. And he goes home and he has this conversation with his dad and about that we've decided we're going to get married so that I could get insurance. We also wanted to be married. And that was the trigger at that moment. And his dad was like, well, so she's going to, and I don't remember how he said it, but something else. So she's going to be a Winters, or is she going to have your name or whatever? And William's response was, well, she didn't fuck with my name. I don't fuck with hers. And then I don't know, but that felt really joyful for me to have, this kind of standing up against that in that way that was sweet and irreverent and humorous to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's amazing. And it just sort of speaks to the nature of the individualism, the individuality and autonomy, yet the bond, as you said earlier, it's real. It doesn't matter if you're living on other sides of the world, not speaking. Your story is your story, and it stands on its own. I love that. Mm-hmm. You don't need the last name to solidify it or anything.
Yeah. In fact, we can actually build a world where we can solidify it in like more stable and honest or meaningful ways for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that the sharing of a name or a certificate of marriage does not create a safe container. That doesn't create anything other than a piece of paper and some legal benefits, but it doesn't mean you're invincible to anything.
Yeah. I mean, again, for my friends who are gay, it does create safety.
Sure.
In the larger world.
Sure.
And even in some ways in our psyches structurally, because we've been trained to feel safe in the mononormative narrative. And it has this place where what you're saying, Finn, is like, but it lacks some of that. You can't totally do it. And that can be really risky to let it hang only on that.
Yeah, I think I meant it mostly from a framework or from a standpoint of it doesn't make your partnership impervious to the risks of other partnership. We didn't get married and all of a sudden Emma doesn't see another person as attractive. There's not a chance that somebody could come in. It doesn't shield us from the world. In many ways, I think in many ways, relationally.
Yeah, I hear you. I think you're totally right. I mean, I think it's like, how do we manage both?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's like kind of cool that like on some level we're like, well, we're going to get married and we're going to make use of those benefits and create safety for ourselves. And we're not going to do it the way that you're telling us to.
Yeah.
We're going to keep our names.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll actually let you go now. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
I could keep talking too, clearly. So thank you for giving me the space. Yeah.
Well, maybe a part 2 through 10 is on the way. So we will keep circling in orbit. So I'm very grateful for your time today and all of your work, Anna.
Yeah, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Happy Metamour Day.
Happy Metamour Day. And we're back. Thank you for everything, Anna. We're so excited to get this episode out there as we've shared and for just all the amazing work that you do. Happy Metamour Day, everyone. And a reminder, go check out all of Anna's work using the links in the podcast show notes on our website.
Yeah, and anybody who happens to be in the Bay Area, we probably should have mentioned this in the intro, but it completely slipped our minds. Tonight, February 28th, we're going to be in Oakland at a bar called District. Celebrating Metamour Day with all of the other Metamours and all of the amazing people, including Anna. So come out, check it out. We'd love to see you. We will put the information in the podcast show notes.
Yes.
So hey, thank you, Anna.
Thank you. A reminder that our next virtual meet and greet is going to be next Thursday. That is March 7th. Sign up on our website on the banner on our homepage. And I think that's it.
Don't forget to get yourself some Metamour cards. You can even send them to yourself if you want.
Why not?
Yeah.
They're super cute.
You could send us a Metamour card.
Yeah, you could also do that.
I'd love that. Don't forget, you can do that. The links are in the show notes below. Next week.
Ooh, and next week we bring back Jill and Jack.
We're breaking records next week.
Yes, we bring back Jill and Jack. They were on episode 97, so that was quite a while ago.
That was a few days ago.
They were also on our Focus Fridays season 1.7. That was the episode number a few years ago as well. And then they were also part of the Power of Witness series that we did a few years ago with Catherine. So they've been on the podcast quite a bit, but we haven't heard their personal update in a while. So we dive in, talk about the last few years, and it's an incredible conversation.
Yeah, these two will blow your mind every single time you listen to their story and to listen to them work through and talk through the things that they do. You do not need to go and listen to episode 97. However, it is fucking amazing. So I recommend it. You also don't need to listen to the entire Power of Witness series in which they were part of.
It is also amazing.
It is amazing, and it definitely deep dives into their partnership. But this conversation we have next week is amazing. The updates that have happened over the last few years are incredible. The life changes, the transformations. I'm super pumped.
Yes.
If I didn't want to get it out there so bad, I'd wait till episode 400, but I'm not waiting. We'll bring them back.
Or how about 350?
That's not a milestone. It's not even a palindrome, Emma. Would have been like 353 maybe.
Should have waited till 333.
Sorry, Jill and Jack. We couldn't wait.
We're just too excited to get their story out there as well.
All right. Well, with that, we hope you all have a wonderful week ahead. We hope you celebrate the hell out of Metamour Day. We will see you next week for Jill and Jack. Again, you don't have to go back and listen, but they are amazing conversations.
And I think that's it.
That is it. We'll see everybody in a week.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.